The biggest problem that I have is actually convincing them that they need to try something different.
It's time to down tools for a bit. Welcome to the ToolShed, the influential podcast for anyone and everyone involved in the building industry. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey there, before we kick off, I want to share a really important thought. 71% of you who watch this channel frequently don't subscribe. So if you've enjoyed any video you've ever watched, can you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps the channel more than you think, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests get. So let's go. Skye, welcome to the ToolShed Podcast. Apparently you're all the way across what we call the pond in New Zealand, and your company is called Unconventional Organisation. When I first saw that, I thought, oh, here we go. This is going to rival the longest email address compared to buildersbusinessblackbelt.com.au. I've regretted calling the business that every time I have to type in my email address. So
Yeah.
welcome to the show. I guess the first question is, what is Unconventional Organisation all about?
Yeah, so we are all about helping business owners who have unconventional brains. So they struggle with ADHD symptoms, time blindness, working memory, shiny object syndrome, and it's bottlenecking their business growth. We are a specialized support program that helps them get unstuck and build their business in a way that works for their brain.
That sounds fantastic or fascinating. So, a whole bunch of questions popped into my brain as you were doing that introduction there. I guess the first thing that we really need to unpack is what is ADHD? That's the first thing we need to understand, because I'm sure that there's a bunch of misunderstanding out there about what it is and so forth. So explain what it is to start with.
Yeah. So to get diagnosed with ADHD, it's something that you have to go see a psychiatrist or in some cases a clinical psychologist, and they'll go through and they'll ask you questions to determine if this is a problem that you've had that's pervasive across, different parts of your life and, persistent across time. Essentially, it's a struggle with with attention. So it's an attention deficit, attention hyperactive struggles. So if you're somebody who feels like you're driven by a motor, you get distracted, you have a hard time remembering details, you tend to interrupt other people, you could have it, specifically if you struggled with that across your whole life. And if you're a business owner, believe it or not, the chances that you have ADHD are a lot higher because a lot of us choose to go into this particular kind of industry. Yeah.
You just mentioned you could have it, and that was sort of spinning around in my head as well. So the question really is how important is it to get a true and correct diagnosis? Because I've been involved with and have overheard many conversations of people just saying, I reckon I've got it, or I reckon you've got it. Friends and colleagues diagnosing each other. And I guess my reason for asking the question, and I'm genuinely wanting to learn more about this, is that I came from a place where I've been learning and teaching as a coach about mindset for 35 years. And something that I have experienced and believe is that your input determines your output to a great degree. What you put in your mind really does affect how things turn out. Also, what you choose to apply as a discipline. Like, so I first started out back in the days prior to the internet, teaching people time management and things like that. And I found that just the practices of many people caused that they were incredibly disorganized. And so I guess there has to be some sort of discussion about that some people have a genuine reason for that, and it might be ADHD, and other people are just lazy, I guess. So what's the importance of getting that diagnosis?
It's a tricky one. So first of all, I would say we don't require you to have a diagnosis. So if
Yeah.
you work with us, we just ask that you are somebody who feels that executive functioning strategies like the ones we teach are going to be helpful, because we're not dealing with medication, we're not dealing with anything like that. And
Yeah.
even in research, you'll see people talking about subclinical ADHD as a thing. The reasons to get the diagnosis are a couple. One is you might have something else going on. So sometimes people could have another issue, like another mental health issue that
Yeah.
they might miss if they don't go and get an official diagnosis. So that's one of the reasons you might want to do that. There is a world where you do that anyway and they miss the diagnosis. That happens. And also if you want to take medication, obviously that's a reason to do it. The other reason is actually because of that, what you mentioned about laziness, because a lot of times when I'm working with people, the biggest problem that I have is actually convincing them that they need to try something different, because the feeling often is, oh, I'm just lazy and I just need to try harder at doing it the way everyone else is doing it. And they have no idea that if they just adjusted the system in a way that worked for them and worked for their brains, they would get the outcome they're looking for without all of the frustration and pain that they're putting into it right now.
Yeah. One of the other terms that you mentioned in the introduction was, I don't remember specifically, but it sounded like the bright, shiny object syndrome. Oh, look, a squirrel. And it is pretty easy for many people to suffer from that, I guess. What are your thoughts on that? What are some of the things that you teach, or some of the ideas that you share with people that suffer from that? Because it is it's incredibly frustrating for the person. It could be incredibly frustrating for their leadership as well. Can't you just focus on this one thing? And they tend to get distracted. I guess on the other side of the coin, there is, looking for an excuse to not, I've got this $1 million decision to make, so I'll clean my desk instead. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So what have you learned about that, and what can you share that's helpful for people listening to this that have experienced that, like they find it very difficult to stick with it and they get distracted easily?
Honestly, that's one of the biggest things that I teach in the program. So we have a program called Focus Balanced Growth, and it's all about activation and taking action, because a lot of times people know what they need to do. The problem is that they haven't done it. Sometimes they've gone to great lengths to acquire the information about what they need to do. They've paid a lot of money for it. They're still not doing it. The day is still ending and they've just been fighting fires and nothing else has been happening. So we teach specifically, we take people through a combination of system and accountability to help them to solve that problem and solve it, in the moment and then forever. One of the simplest things that we teach is actually a prioritization filter, something to help you go from I have a million things to do today to actually what is the stuff that needs to get done. The reason being that often, as you mentioned, a lot of that stuff that has to get done is really just a smokescreen for not wanting to do the thing that you do. So I can take you through that process now if you'd like.
Sure. I guess the process is really interesting to me, because it's something that with Builders Business Black Belt, we have an entry-level program called Blueprint, and one of the very first things that we teach people there is a personal success ritual to start the day. So I guess it's a bit more of a preventative approach, and part of that is planning and prioritizing. And one little simple idea we stumbled across a little while ago, we ended up calling it the 3 that count, because we're part of their personal success ritual. The last part before they do the plan for the day was just sort of unpacking their half dozen most important personal or professional goals. And while their mind is in that space, I've suggested that they go play a mental game with yourself and imagine that the rule for today was you're only allowed to take 3 actions. Each of those 3 actions cannot be longer than 20 minutes in duration. And after you've done those, you cannot do anything else. You've just got to sit around and do nothing. And you play that mental game with yourself to identify what those 3 things are. And then you go do those 3 things, then plan for your day. Because I used to teach people, the first thing you do is do this PSR and then plan for your day. But we've found that the quality of their planning, when they do those 3 things that count and go through that, if I could only do 3 things process, it's made a profound difference. So I'd love to hear and for you to unpack your system, because I might be able to steal some of it.
Fair enough. Well, a lot of the systems that we teach, they are, they're coming from a background in academia. I was a former academic. A lot of the stuff that I, learned for my own self was around how our brains work when we have ADHD. And a lot of times we're working with time blindness, dopamine struggles, which is the dopamine, shiny object that we're talking about, and then also working memory. So we're trying to understand what is truly urgent today and what is important. Those are the 2 pieces that we need to do. And so often people have a very, very long list for what's truly urgent. And actually, if you want to, you can just DM me. You can DM me Mick 2025 at Unconventional Organisation on Instagram, and I will give you a chat bot that will talk you through this process and help you spit out at the end exactly what you need to do. You just chat to it. So the first thing you want to do, and this is similar to other things, but no, this is not an Eisenhower matrix, is you want to go ahead and you want to just do a brain dump of all of the tasks that you have to do that are in your head. So not the ones in your email, not the ones on your task lists, just what's in your head. We've got a lot of things in our head. It makes it difficult for us, especially if you've got ADHD symptoms, you struggle with working memory, you struggle with holding that information. So all of the tasks, homework, the lot of it, write it down somewhere, hopefully somewhere you can reuse again. And then once you've done that, I want you to have a look at that list, and I want you to ask yourself a question. And this is funny because I think we've got a little bit of a similarity here with the question. But the question is, if your day went sideways and you ended up in a waiting room somewhere, and that was your day, you were in this waiting room, you couldn't leave, what is the thing you would still try and do on your phone? Or you would message someone and say, look, I'm not going to be able to do this tomorrow because I'm not going to be prepared because I haven't done what I needed to do today. Yeah. Those tasks are the true most urgent tasks that you have to do today. They're the ones you can put a star next to and say, I have to get this done today. A lot of people will come in, they'll swear they have 200 truly urgent tasks. When you do this exercise, I've almost never had anyone have more than 5. Yeah. So it tells us, okay, this is what's urgent. Some people have none, and that's great, because what we've done now is we've cleared the calendar and we've gone, okay, so the rest of the time that you have today needs to be spent doing that 1 or 2 really, truly important needle moving tasks. And when you work with us, we help you figure out what that is, and we make sure you know exactly what you're going to do next with it. But that's what you need to be doing today. A lot of the time people feel like because their task list isn't finished, they can't do the stuff that's actually going to grow their business. They're stuck just ticking off easy to tick off tasks. And at the end of the day, that's not your job. Your job isn't to get to the end of your task list. You can do that and fail at running a business.
You mentioned there that some people have none after they do the exercise. Some people have none. Again, part of that PSR that we teach, part of the creating a prioritized daily action list is obviously the priorities, and teaching people that an A means it's vital. B is important, and helping them to understand the distinction between the two. Like vital or life-sustaining means that if I don't do this thing today, the goal that it's attached to can never, ever be accomplished.
Yeah.
If B, it wouldn't make any difference if I don't do it today, but it'll be a shit fight, in the days to come. So it's important versus urgent. Important versus vital. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on the importance of teaching people the difference between urgent and important, or urgent and vital, because quite often when we get people to apply those priorities, like you've said, and I sit with them and I ask them the questions, but what would happen if you didn't do it today, and what would really, when they do their priorities, when they do their lists, many times people don't have any A's in their list. Like there are no really important things. That's just a list of stuff. It's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Like you say, it's just a list of tasks.
It's really crucial for me. For the people that we work with, it's incredibly crucial, because one of the biggest problems that people have when they come and start working with us is that they're going to get distracted. So they're going to go off and say, okay, well, I need to do this, or I know that we agreed that my acquisition pipeline was the most important thing, but I decided, actually it would be better if I started optimizing my, something else.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what's actually happening is your brain is really smart, and it doesn't want you to do something that's going to be boring, confusing, emotionally vulnerable, like none of these things, right? It wants to convince you that something else is more important. And so that is exactly what it does. It says, no, I think we'll go in this direction. Thank you. That's going to work a lot better for me. And then you'll kind of justify it to yourself, and you won't get anywhere and you won't make any progress. And at the end of the day, what I always say to my community is, if you get to the end of working with me and you feel better, but your business isn't better and your life hasn't improved in that way, I consider it a failure. Like, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get actual results and actual outcomes for you. And part of that is, I guess, how would I put this? Part of it is learning to identify when you are hiding from something.
You just mentioned feel better. Let's unpack that, because I think it's really worthwhile unpacking what's behind that, because working with, I think that we do very, very similar stuff. I just happen to work with residential builders. So, but, people are skin bags of emotion. Like, everyone kind of gets pushed around by very similar emotions. And what's your conversation? What sort of maybe techniques, methods, ideas do you share with your people to help them to understand that it's not about feeling better all of the time? Because if we left it up to, like you've just said, I don't feel like doing that, I feel like doing that, and that's what you use to make your decisions all day long, not much would happen. Your business most definitely wouldn't be successful. And we've just got to understand that quite often the things that make the difference, that move the needle in our business, aren't things that we feel like doing, that we love doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a way to turn sometimes things that we don't like doing or don't enjoy doing into something that's a bit more fun and enjoyable if you sat down and thought about it. But if we just leave it to emotion rather than some form of discipline, we end up in a bit of trouble. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I will say discipline is an interesting word when you're working with ADHD. So the first thing I would say is, we're not trying to get you to just do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have systems to help you. So we talk about the step into focus routine and rewarding yourself for starting, because the way our neurology works, that's better for us if you have an ADHD brain and all that kind of stuff. So we go into how to make it easier to do the task. But the reason that we're talking about this idea is, one, I believe in results. Like, I don't believe in just having somebody feel like they understand themselves better. I think that if you understand yourself better and you're working in a better system, then my job is to help you have a business that improves. I mean, business is in itself, a wonderful personal development program. It is going to challenge you. And part of that growth is, looking at how to be a leader and how to be a leader with an ADHD brain and how to show up and delegate and all of those things that is going to make your business so much more successful. And then on the other side, we're also talking about, if we're talking about working hard, it's really going to be, what is the priority to you? Like, what is the thing that you want to do? What is your ultimate goal? And helping you get closer to that and helping you hit the next domino that's going to allow you to get closer to that.
Just to wind back the conversation a little bit, there are a couple of things that you mentioned that I think are worthy of unpacking. One you called time blindness, the other you called working memory. Can you unpack what they are, how they affect us?
100%. So if we're talking about time blindness, and I'll talk specifically to construction here because I work with people, who have similar timelines.
Yeah.
You guys know that you have to get equipment, you have to order it, you have to get it delivered, you have to make sure that there's people on site. You have to make sure that you're not wasting people's time, so you don't have people that you're paying and they're not doing anything. You have to negotiate with people when their start dates are, when their end dates are. There's apps and systems to do this, but at the end of the day, if you struggle with ADHD symptoms, you struggle with estimating how long something's going to take, more so than other people. So that means that you sort of have two ways of thinking about things. It's going to get done today or it's going to get done end of day Friday. Like, that's kind of the two time frames that we're often working on. And so the biggest problem you can have in, this kind of job in terms of time blindness is that you're going to overpromise and underdeliver when it comes to time. You're going to underestimate how long something is going to take. So that's the time blindness piece.
Yeah.
The working memory piece is equally a big struggle. So if you're the kind of person who will be on site and somebody will say to you, hey, can we just grab this thing? Can you email that person? Can you remember to do this quote? You say, no worries, I've got this. And then you leave the site. You don't have this. It's gone. Like, working memory struggles, it's done. Like, that thing is gone. And so if you're also the kind of person who doesn't have a list and doesn't have a system for remembering tasks and also a system for writing them down or getting them down in a really, really fast, messy, but it works for you kind of way, then you're going to struggle with this. And often what will happen is you'll find yourself in a position where you say, people don't take me seriously on the site. I tell them that they have to remember to do this thing and I have to, and then they don't really do it and they don't take it seriously. And sometimes that's because you've been engaging in a lot of struggles with working memory and they feel like what you're saying doesn't hold a lot of weight as a result.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that just sort of screams that everybody needs a system. Like, back in the day before we all started using electronic systems and had the phones with the reminders and the calendars and all of that sort of stuff in it. 35 years ago, I used to teach a process called time power and using a day timer diary. It was a folder and paper and pen and all of that sort of stuff. And we just taught a system, and it just makes so much sense to me. Like when your scenario there, you're talking to somebody and you go, "Yep, got it," and you don't got it. Like you forget about it, and then you become that person that that guy. Every time
or the person people have to follow up with. They have to be like, do you remember? And then at the end, it feels like, why are we even doing this? Like, you're never going to remember, so why am I even telling you?
Yeah, and it just makes sense to me that everybody should have a system, because it's something that I have discussions about all the time and trying to help people understand that this here is not a storage facility. It's for imagination and creativity. Like we've got all sorts of tools for storage.
Which is the upside of ADHD. We are, when you look at the research, creative problem solving, creative thinking,
Yeah.
original thinking, your brain's probably got you out of a bunch of like very, gnarly situations because of that creative thinking.
Yep.
And yeah, when we're holding a bunch of reminders in our head very badly, it's really stifling that ability.
One of the terms you used, we use it also, and I'd like to find a better term for it, only because of the word dump, but you said brain dump.
Yeah.
And like it's a really, really powerful activity, and we kind of sort of use an analogy of you look into somebody's garage and there's just crap everywhere, and they're trying to find a 10 mil socket for you to lend you, and they can't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just because they're just throwing stuff in there. And I had a real experience of this when we were moving out of our last place to this place, and I did actually have to borrow a socket from the next door neighbour, and he went into his garage, and it looked like there'd been an explosion in a tool shed. It was just all over the place. And so the brain dump analogy that I tend to use is move everything out of the garage onto the footpath, and we only put back into the garage what we might need in the not too distant future. What's your process of a brain dump? Because it's very, very powerful, and there's lots of little nuances with it that can make it better.
Yeah.
How do you go about it?
So the key to a brain dump, or to really like doing this, is we want you to have the emotional release of having taken things out of your brain. That's in itself often very, very sort of like, oh, okay, I can think now kind of space, without the overwhelm of, oh my gosh, I'm 50 minutes into a session and there's a pile of stuff, digital, physical, whatever it is, everywhere, and now I don't know how to deal with this stuff. So we want to dump in very sort of tangible, specific ways, if that makes sense. So that's why, for example, I say write down everything that's in your head.
Yep.
Don't look at your email. Don't look at your other task lists. We're just going to engage with the stuff that's in your head. And also why I say put it on a Google Doc or a notes app or something you can come back to, because this is not going to be brain dump and then set it on fire and do another one tomorrow. We're going to be doing, going back to it tomorrow and then filtering it, adding new tasks to the top, going through the things that have been done, crossing them out. And we have a system where we help you organize it so that it's not overwhelming. Because one of the things we don't want to do, and this is again very ADHD thing to do, is get very inspired, maybe by listening to this podcast, for example, and say, okay, I am gonna do that thing. I'm gonna take everything out of my garage and I'm gonna, only put back what I need. And then, it's 7 p.m. Your partner's going, hey, what is going on? And when is this going to be done? And you just have a pile of stuff outside your garage. And that, for a lot of people, is incredibly overwhelming. And so we want to avoid that situation.
That was Skye Waterson from Unconventional Organisation. We will make sure that all of the links for the Instagram, for the website, the podcast will all be there. And I just encourage you to jump in and have that conversation with the bot, because I personally think that being aware of what's going on and how you work best is very, very valuable. And having someone in your corner like Skye to help you with those specific challenges, regardless of whether you've got a diagnosis of ADHD, I just know feeling more in control and using systems and processes and having people guide you to be more organised and more fulfilled and help you to achieve your goals is absolutely worthwhile. So use all of those links in the description to go and discover, and hopefully that will be helpful for you. We'll be back with another episode of this podcast. Before you know it, I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. That is all. I'm out. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the ToolShed. If this podcast struck a chord with you, Make sure you spread the word by sharing it with your mates in the building industry. We love your help to make the building industry better for everyone involved.